wasting time on forums again?
No, I'm not on the forums, and that's not wasting time. That's valuable research and community and fellowship, socializing.
That's what you need, socializing.
It is. No, actually, I'm building a motor right now. I decided to take a different approach on the engine for the 65 Chevelle.
You mean by building it on a laptop?
Yes. Well, we're gonna build it on a simulation first before we get any parts, and this way we'll have an idea of how this thing's going to perform before we get any parts. So this is actually very cool because the Dynomation software allows you to use real actual parts and part numbers and get a ballpark estimation of the kind of performance you're looking at. And in our case, the engine in the 65 is a 350 cubic inch Chevy. It's basically a parts store remanufactured motor. So what you do is you come over here on the very first set of parameters, and it allows you to select what kind of block you're going to use. You hit the drop downs, and you can see if you go through American, and then you pick Chevy, and then you pick 8-cylinder small block, and then you cruise all the way down to 350 V8 at the bottom, and you just hit OK, and then it automatically plugs in the bore and stroke and the rod length and some of the other factors that are common to a small block Chevy. So what we wanted is, it's not going to be a race car by any stretch, but we wanted something. The target was 400 horsepower and about 400 foot-pounds of torque, because that means with a 350 cubic inch engine, 400 horsepower is just over 1 horsepower per cubic inch, which means we don't have to run super high compression, and it'll run good on pump gas is the goal. So when it comes to selecting cylinder heads, we've had good luck with the Holley aluminum heads. They've got a 20-degree setup in them and 2.02 valves, 160 exhaust. And with the pistons that are in the motor, it's going to come out to be, I don't know, about 9.5 to 1 compression is what we're estimating on. So you go ahead and you put all that information in about the cylinder heads and the compression ratio and what kind of intake manifold you're going to use and carburetor and the exhaust manifolds and everything else. The fun part is when you get to the camshaft, you can click the cam manager here and actually pick a real camshaft. In our case, we used one up here made by Comp Cams, part number 12-242-2, and these are the specs of the camshaft. The specs that we chose have a kind of a tight intake center line and lobe separation, and it's not a whole lot of lift and not a whole lot of duration, so it's going to be fairly smooth on the street. It's not going to be a super rumpy rump cam. And when we selected this cam with the compression ratio and the heads, you can see over here on this big graph that we are going to end up with the red line is horsepower, and according to this, we're going to hit just over 400, and we should hit just over 400 foot-pounds of torque. We can look at the table version of that and see the actual numbers. Our peak flywheel horsepower should be the estimate 404 at 5,500 RPM. The peak torque looks like about 425 at 4,000. And again, with something that's perfectly livable on pump gas, and it should run smooth, and it'll work with the Holley 670 Street Avenger carburetor that we already had, and the Y-end intake manifold we already had, and the set of Flowtech headers that we wanted to use for the car. So now that we played with this for a while to figure out different camshafts and different compression ratios, and this is kind of the happy medium of what we wanted to achieve our goal with the most conservative possible engine. But you can build whatever you want, and in fact I got another window open over here that has, this is kind of the rough specs for our turbo Oldsmobile motor, 426 cubic inches, and a camshaft that I just made up out of my mind, and a turbo that we just slapped on it, and I don't even know if it's going to be right, but the estimates already are 700 foot-pounds and or 700 horsepower and 800 foot-pounds, at 15 pounds of boost on 9-to-1 compression. And that's the fun part of the software, is you can just monkey with anything you want and immediately see if it's going to work, or if it's going to make a weird power spike, or if the power band comes in too late or too soon, and make changes in the engine here before you even buy your first part. So not playing around, but not monkeying around as you insinuated originally.
Okay, now I have questions.
All right.
My first question is, how current is the software like? Can you do LS1 motors and all
absolutely.
that stuff?
Very good question. When you go to choose your motor, you can do all the way up to the latest American V8s, the LS Gen 3, Gen 4 stuff. But even, they've got engines in here that are British, French, Japanese, the latest German car stuff. And the software is updatable online. It'll update itself and download not only the latest engine configurations, but also the latest camshaft part numbers from Comp Cams, and the latest turbo specs and superchargers and whatever you can think of.
Okay, another question. You just said turbo stuff. Does it do a specific company's turbos, or is it only by like a turbo size?
It does both. It does a bunch of different turbo manufacturers and a bunch of sizes within those manufacturers. So, for example, this big list here, that's just some of the turbos that are available to choose from. And this particular version needs to be updated. There's more than that now. So it stays in tune.
Very interesting.
Yes.
So maybe you're not playing around after all.
No, I'm not. But I kind of am, because this really isn't.
You're going to do this all night.
No. We got to...
We have a motor to build, Kevin. Are you going to finish this, or are you going to keep messing with this and changing your mind?
We're going to get it right.
You know what I think this program does?
What?
It helps with the scope creep.
Scope creep. We're not changing the scope of the project. In fact, we are using this as a limiting factor, so we don't get too big of a cam or too big of cylinder heads. It's allowing us to, like I said, we want to build the most conservative motor we can to make this power level and be happy.
Okay, but this program does allow you to dream big and find out how to get it to the biggest number you want.
Well, the fun thing is you can take what you think you know about camshafts or compression ratios or valve sizes or cylinder porting or anything you want, cylinder head porting, and put that information in, and this will do what's called iterations, where you can, let's do a little quick iterator here. We'll get this fired up.
I think you like the word iterator.
Iterator. What that means is it will simulate your combination and then make a change, a slight change, and then simulate it again, and then make another change and simulate it again, and it'll map the changes so you can see what the best possible result is. For example, right here, we're going to optimize our cam timing. This is a preset for the most torque, right? So all you got to do is click the iterator and watch it. Now you can see like there's graphs moving around over here and moving around over here. And what it's doing is it is changing that camshaft timing, like how you would install the cam, and it's going to determine what the best installed position is. And this is something that you would have to do on an engine dyno. You'd have to put the camshaft in, and then you'd dyno it, and then you'd have to change the position of the cam, dyno it again, and change it again, and dyno it again. And most people don't have the time or money to keep doing that on a dyno. But in our case right here, we're 60% through the test. It's run 1,250 simulations. It's like you play with this thing forever in reality. So now it's not even finished, and we've already found an increase of 10 foot-pounds of torque without changing any parts, just by installing them a certain way. And this software lets you do that. I mean, it's badass.
What do you think Nick Scava would do with this software?
Break it. Nick would ask it to do things that it's not ready to do, like he does with everything. But I'm sure he would love this tool to be able to monkey with stuff all day long and come up with race combinations and secret tricks. And again, on his level, it's even better because Nick's dealing with $20, $30, $50, $100,000 motors, and to set one of those up, a big monster turbo motor on a dyno, takes all day. It takes 2, 3, 4 days to set one up on a dyno and to run it and to make a change. So if you can simulate that here, and at least you don't necessarily use this to come up with the dead nuts number to say I know my motor will make exactly 404 horsepower. That's not the value of the tool. The value of the tool is to be able to make changes and look at the overall horsepower curve and torque curve and see where the curve comes in and match it to your application. And then you can go chassis dyno it later and find out, if it's exactly right. But at least the characteristics of the engine will be accurately predetermined before you have to invest any time or money. This found us 11.5 foot-pounds of torque just by doing that little test.